Hey, Andrew, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate your time and the opportunity.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your industry, your background, what you do?
For the past 15 years, I've been in IT. I've had several different roles, largely in the business development and sales capacity, but IT is a unique industry that's always kept me on my toes. There's a rate of change and evolution, a dependency on technology we see in every facet of life that, quite frankly, intrigues me. What was something that your parents and likely your mother told you, and it's something that my mother and parents told me daily? Don't get into cars with strangers.
Yeah, I know.
And you think about this, and what does this mean? Well, today's generation and our kids are growing up in an environment where they're going to be getting in cars with strangers, vis-a-vis Uber,
Yeah.
Lyft, and other share ride services. And this is just an example how technology has changed the way we live and work, how it's shaping our goals, and the way we live our lives. So today's generation and kids of different ages are now accustomed to leveraging these types of services from these types of companies. And these companies exist because of the technology, the applications that
Absolutely.
exist today that did not in the past. Now, I'm not saying it's without prudence, but this is shaping the goals of the new generation, of kids, of generations of different age groups. And that's just one example. COVID and the pandemic hit last year, and workforce transformation generally is accepted as being accelerated 10 years.
Yes.
So when I talk about workforce transformation, there's a lot that comes to mind for me. I think about the ability to provide employees, workforce, the technology, the platforms, the ability to work anywhere from their choosing. Historically speaking, small companies, sub 100 employees, sub 50, where there was a reticence to move to that type of environment. And understanding that certain industries cannot have employees work from home, but COVID has shaped that type of adoption, that mentality, and that framework. So technology is now dependent on the ability to execute with agility in all areas of business. Now, again, notwithstanding those individuals and companies that do certain things and require certain personnel, but if you're a company today that cannot provide that type of flexibility, you can almost guarantee that those individuals are going to end up like a lot of other companies, including the big ones, which is struggling to find employees to come work for them. Not only struggling to recruit, but retain. Again, I talk about the new generation, but we're talking about the individuals of growing up with certain things that are top of mind and top and priority. And it's not just necessarily what remuneration package or what type of dollars and cents he or she is making. It's what is my life going to look like? Right?
Sure.
Am I going to be forced to work, or am I going to be working in an environment that needs me there at 8 and leaves at 6? Am I going to be traversing a bridge off island and spending 2 hours in traffic? And when you think about that and how technology is influencing the way we interact, communicate, and work, companies that cannot provide or are reluctant to provide that type of environment will struggle. And this workforce transformation is happening, much like the digital and IT transformations and security transformations that are top of mind for all companies. But that's happening, and COVID has accelerated that 10 years.
Well, you brought up so many amazing points, but one thing that I really I think that most people miss. So like a lot of people get cynical about what can happen, and instead of looking at technology as an enabler and something that's going to make our life better, people look at technology as something that they're afraid of because they don't understand it, and they think, like, oh my God, it's going to change this. If this is not going to be as fun as it was, or I won't be able to do this, or I think in many cases it's exactly the opposite.
I agree.
And you look at the way that our life is today and how much easier it is to just live the life that we live today and like, entertain our kids and like do the things that we do. And, it makes me excited about what's coming in the future, and I've been reading about like robotics and artificial intelligence and how AI and robotics are going to play a role in any industry going forward in the future. And, let's put aside people's normal fears when it comes to job replacement and all that stuff, because I don't think that's the end result. I think it makes life better.
It's a great point, which I'll touch on. One of the talking points I had as a representative of one of these large OEM companies that I work for, in dealing with a value-added reseller who I was working with to try to grow the share of wallet, an end user. I worked with the federal government for many years. There was a reticence to adopt technology for a variety of factors. Loss of job was a big one. If I implement this technology and this service with these resources, am I putting myself at risk? That can be the case. I'm not going to sit here and emphatically say it's not. But the talking point of the rebuttal to that, which we often see, is, well, if you're able to do 10 more things a day, a bit more efficiently, and you're struggling in other facets of your business, we talk about repurposing those individuals. We talk or repositioning those individuals, or adding on different types of responsibilities to their specific mandate. And I struggle daily with the inundation of Teams calls and virtual calls. I think we've all had it. We've seen the commercials, but without it, think about where we would have been over the last year. And there is a fear to are we going to be too reliant on the technology? And I think businesses, logistics, warehousing, just to name a few, is a good example of a scenario where technology will help, in your specific business. And as businesses look at the past 16 months during COVID and they evaluate, do we want to own property? Do we want to own our own facilities? Do we want to be responsible for the logistics and supply chain management as we understand it? Things are changing. And so those individuals that have individuals in their employment that are entrusted to do those things are likely going to be entrusted to do some different things moving forward. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, we all have our moments where we say, we're a little too reliant on technology. And I've been there. And there is a healthy balance and reliance on technology in the workforce, in our personal lives. And once you reconcile that, once you evaluate the pros and cons, we're much better off. We're much better off. And again, to anybody that is fearful of what technology will do for the business, I'd ask them this. If you do not consider some of these changes and your competition are, where are you going to be?
Exactly.
It's a very simple statement, and it is something that I would invite anybody listening, anybody watching to consider, because technology is not looked at merely as a capital investment. Technology now is looked at by all principals in companies, whether it be the CTO, operating officer, and marketing, sales individuals, as an enabler of their business. And those companies and individuals that are still reticent, and they may have their reasons to look at technology as an enabler, I'd really ask them to think about that question, because if you're not doing it, somebody else is, and they're doing it quicker, they're doing it more efficiently, and they're doing it at a lower cost of operation.
And something else that's interesting is normally when you look at the leadership of an organization, that individual, they came up in that organization from somewhere or from another organization. And, like a CEO might have come up through finance, or they might have come up through sales or operations, right? And so they're supposed to see the whole picture, and some of them do, and some of them are amazing at that. But there are also blind spots, and I think that's where resources can actually come in and help across different organizations technologically or other ways to help them see the areas that they may not if you came up and became a CEO through finance, someone coming in and giving you a fresh perspective on technology and how that can enable your organization, that's a huge value. Because you didn't live and breathe that. So you may be very open and you may be very well read and you may that's a huge value add.
Fantastic point, and I'll use your word, or the words you use, blind spot. And as it relates to technology, so BYOD, bring your own device. And when we talk about workforce transformation, the two go hand in hand, right? If you're a company that wants to employ individuals to work from home or remotely with any one of their chosen devices or devices that they own, right, you need to make sure that you have an infrastructure, you have a networking capabilities to allow for that BYOD environment. Well, when we talk about blind spots and concerns and something that is top of mind, we talk about security. Cybersecurity is a really good example.
Sure.
So you could bring on all these devices, but what about the actual physical device? What if you've loaded that, tangible device with specific information to the company, financial papers and history and customer information and on and on and on, and that physical device gets lost?
It's a nightmare.
By the same extension, you don't lose that device, but you've brought over a 5-year-old PC or a laptop or a tablet, and it's just not loaded with the proper security platforms and services to ensure that device is not bringing in certain malware, ransomware,
absolutely,
and malicious information. Well, that blind spot is now front and center for a lot of companies.
Right.
And every company, sub 50, sub 20, sub 100 people, do each one of these companies have a networking administrator? Do they have a head of IT and a CTO?
For sure, not all.
They do not. Yeah. So not only are there blind spots with regards to the actual environment and technology and devices, but we're talking about intellectual insights. And so some of these companies do not. And, anybody that is asking these questions, should be identifying, or probably can identify quite easily, quite concisely, do we have the right people to help us? And if the answer is no, there are companies, there are individuals who have that expertise that you can engage, that one can engage for those types of insights.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the information's out there, and I'm a really strong believer that, everyone in their own area is working on developing their trade, developing their capabilities and their knowledge and their product, whatever that is, if it's a service or a product. And there's never going to be one great solution for everyone. Everyone requires a different solution.
Yep.
And sometimes finding the answer is finding the group or the person or the company that is working on your specific challenge, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the biggest guy or the small guy or whatever. You just have to be able to identify how are you actually going to solve the challenges that you're facing, right?
It's a great point. And this type of help at a specific individual company perspective can come from individuals and companies of all different sizes.
Right.
I often like to leverage in a specific sales call. If we're talking about a vertical, if we're talking about certain pain points that company ABC have had, that company, DEF is having, what I've always relied on is what has worked, what has that experience been? So whether it be a white paper, whether it be a case study, right, a customer reference, talk to somebody who's gone through this.
Sure, right? Exactly.
What type, and these individuals, companies are big and small, are suffering from the same bullet points. How do we get to market faster? How do we ship faster? How do we reach more people quicker? And on and on and on.
Absolutely.
And this could span, your textiles. This could span, manufacturing of, toilet bowls, whatever the case is, widgets, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
The process, the concerns, and the route to markets, and the way to support their teams and their companies are all front and center. And then, of course, how do you make that all secure? How do you attract the individuals to come work for you? And it's an interesting dilemma to be in, but companies of all sizes are asking themselves these questions, and the companies that are on the that are growing, that are ranked at the top of their field or recognized by their peers as leaders are leaders for a reason, because they've asked these questions, and they put in a certain practice and individuals in place to help manage that. And it does not mean that they're hiring an IT manager at $250,000 a year, whatever the case is, and individuals to manage these environments, but they're asking and leaning on subject matter experts
exactly
to help them in these initiatives.